It's a great pleasure to be here in this distinguished company of subcontinent's best economic minds. Many of you may not know why I am very eminently suited to this session and its chair. I don't know trade, I know nothing about economics, I know nothing about the dimensions of what you call the difficulties which are cropping up every now and then in India-Pakistan trade. Therefore, I am eminently suited to keep the time, and I assure you that I'll do it as efficiently as possible. We have 4 presentations to go and 2 comments in a period of an hour and a half, with question answers and responses to be brought on the table. Is it fair if we have no more than 10 minutes for each presentation? Well, otherwise we can't manage time. Maybe 10 to 12 at the most, and probably 5 to 7 for the comments. With this introduction, may I first request Professor Indranath Mukherjee to make his presentation. Professor Mukherjee is an esteemed colleague of mine. We have worked together in South Asia Department in Jawaharlal Nehru University. He was also the dean of our school, but above all, a very well-known economist who is focusing on South Asian trade and economic relations. Professor Mukherjee, please.
Thank you, Professor Mooney. I have the pleasure of being here, having been a colleague of yours for many, many years, and also to present on behalf of ICREER, with which I have been long associated. This is my plan of presentation. First, let us see the bilateral. Now, let me tell you one thing. I was not able to be presenting day one, not for weather conditions, but other commitments. So there will be some repetitions, which is unavoidable. Bearing that in mind, let us look at the bilateral trade flows. Obviously, the trade flows have been more or less one way, dominated by India, surplus of around $1 billion, in the trade pattern. But it has been going up, mildly growing up. Let us compare this with China. Pakistan has a deficit about 4 billion with China compared to 1 billion with India. And you can see it in this figure more clearly. Since 10 minutes is there, I'll have to skip many things. What are the tariff barriers that face India and Pakistan? What are the tariff barriers they impose? This is the latest data available in the World Bank trade profile. So what this figure brings about is that the average tariff rates in India and Pakistan are more or less the same. But as far as agricultural products are concerned, the tariff rates are much lower in Pakistan, higher in India, so also the bound rates. And as far as non-agricultural goods are concerned, the tariff rates in India are lower, and also perhaps the bound rates. So there is this difference, but the average is about the same in both the countries. There is a tariff liberalization plan, and it was expected by 20th March 2012. There would be the Pakistan would notify the negative list, and thereafter moved from preferential trading under SAFTA, and then a long-term trade liberalization plan was there, by which by 2020 all but 100 tariff lines would be applicable in both the countries. Pakistan would be given a longer phase out than India. I will not go into the details, I have no time. What are Pakistan's apprehensions? There was a lot of official effort put in lot of institutional arrangements were built up gradually over time, and generally the consensus was that under the previous government, at least that I have studied, that it is desirable. A large number of stakeholders accepted the dimension of having, but there was the farmers' lobby, and there were certain lobbies which did not approve it, and there were certain sectors in the industrial lobby who were apprehensive of opening up to the Indian market. India having large economies of scale in pharmaceutical, in auto, would swamp the Pakistan manufacturing. Then there were concerns about a plethora of non-tariff barriers by India on Pakistani products, imposition of TPT, SPS were discussed and often referred to, that these are more stringent, and although they may be applicable to all countries, it was being applied more stringently when it came to Pakistan. India's apprehensions, there are three. Some of them are mine also, and that is the presence of negative lists creates a lot of confusion among traders. I'll come to that. The second thing is the negative list that there offers India disadvantage in non-agricultural goods, and the third is the restriction in the movement of goods through the Wagah border is another non-tariff barrier. A recent study by Cuts defines NTBs as those barriers which are imposed, are a subset of NTMs are subsets of non-tariff barriers. Measures are policy related, whereas the others which discriminate against national as well as third country imports are discriminatory. They are barriers. When an alternative is available, cheaper alternative is available and that is not being utilized, then that is a barrier. Now, the confusion that this creates is that India's export products earlier in the positive list but denied access in the negative list. India's export to Pakistan for those products are mentioned. Then products under Pakistan's Safra sensitive list kept in the negative list. And there are certain exports taking place in that. So the SARC provides the sensitive list, but some of them are in the negative list. So it creates problem for traders, confusion as to which product would be eligible. You know, after all, SARC has its own process. So that anomalies are there. I wanted to bring out. The second thing is that India is losing a level playing ground in non-agricultural products to China, because India is suffering a double whammy, and that negative list prohibits it. And if you see certain sectors, I will quickly go through that. Please bear with me that it will be very fast. What I'm trying to demonstrate in these presentations is that in these products which are in the negative list, Pakistan is not only having MFN with China but giving duty-free access. Therefore, India is suffering a double whammy in not getting the advantage of first mover advantage in the Chinese market for pharmaceuticals and others. Iron and steel, I can't have time to deal with the data. Those who are interested, I couldn't distribute it because it was too short for me to do so. These are all in the negative list, and see the trade with rest of the world, with China and India. Accordingly, the structure of trade between China and India becomes different, because China is importing mainly intermediate and capital goods from China, whereas it is importing mainly raw materials and intermediate goods from India. Very less of consumer goods, very less of capital goods. And this has to do with the negative list, which that is, or the lack of MFN status for India. There appears to be, how much time do I have?
Not much.
I have finished my 10 minutes.
Maximum 5 minutes.
Okay, then accordingly I'll have to, then I rather not present this because that will take more time.
You may briefly highlight.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. The Pakistani perceptions are correct in the sense if those are being applied, psychosanitary and other measures are being applied stringently, then obviously India should do something about that. And the first thing it should do is to energize the MOU that has been signed on 3 areas, trade facilitation. But the picture is not that simple, it's a mixed picture. Mixed in the sense that there are those who welcome import of agricultural products because they get better quality products. There are those who welcome textiles opening up because that helps them even to expand in the Indian market. That are the perceptions of some studies that I have read on this. The 6th round brought a specific slot allotted for discussing non-tariff barriers, and regarding textile and consumer protection, testing labs for azo dyes are available. Certificate of accredited certification bodies labs for Pakistan is acceptable. The one thing that I need to bring out here is that in Pakistan, there is no nationally available consumer protection legislation available. There are state-wise legislations. Therefore, the products that enter the Pakistan market are not that much scrutinized as they are done in India and other countries, because there the standards and Consumer Protection Act is much more well defined. So Pakistan will have to develop its Consumer Protection Act, and in that case the same problem that India faces, they will have to apply those standards on Indian products once they have set up those standards. Look at India's market access protection in agro products. Just glance them. First of them is tea, and then chickpeas, and then cane sugar. These are the top products in which India can access the Pakistani market. How much threat these pose to Pakistan agriculture, I cannot say. But if they do pose a threat, then the obvious alternative is not to grant India MFF, but to go for planned liberalization in the agricultural sector. There are various modalities available. For instance, tariff rate quotas can be thought of. The products can continue to remain in the sensitive list, but negative list should definitely be done away with. Now, these are all the products that India has market access and the possibilities, and I think this has been overdone. The fact that agriculture will be threatened because I looked at those products, I don't think in industry it has been overblown. If Pakistan can face the competition from the industrial hub of Asia, China, can it not even be well placed to face that of India? So there are policy makers here, they are sitting who can influence policy. My appeal to them is that they should pursue this matter. A lot of time has been spent on this. There is no threatening thing that I can see that would happen to Pakistan, and both the countries will benefit. Both are struggling under severe economic stress. Opening up trade will help both the countries, and that's how I will end this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Very well-researched presentation. I think you highlighted perceptual gaps between India and Pakistan on various trade sectors, and gone beyond to suggest measures how they can be bridged and how we can get over them. The next presentation is by Huma Amir, but she is not around, and she has sent her best representative, Mr. Samir Amir, who is from the Pakistan Business Council. Please.
It's on now, yes. One of the advantages of reading somebody else's paper is that you just read. I'm sorry, not somebody else. Okay, so Huma has done a paper on challenges in India-Pakistan trade normalization, and she's kept this from the SME perspective. The reason for looking at the SMEs, according to her, was that the big boys have got the clout, they've got the funds, they've got the networks on both sides of the border, plus they've got very, very strong brands which help them to get market access. So she's concentrated on looking at the SMEs. The research looks at the perceptions of Pakistani SMEs based on their personal experiences or information obtained from colleagues who trade or seek to trade with India. SME firms that she interviewed were manufacturers, exporters, and traders of textiles, herbs and spices, alternate medicines, IT, engineering services, and some agricultural products. The methodology followed was a total of 25 personal interviews were conducted in Karachi and Lahore. Initial sample of firms was identified through FPCCI, KCCI, LCCI, and was built upon through referrals. An interview guide was prepared to bring similarity and direction on the basis of secondary review, but respondents were encouraged to diverge in order to bring new ideas to the fore. In effect, this is a qualitative research. So the way she's structured this paper is that she's identified the issues, their implications, and then remedies which have mostly been suggested by the SMEs themselves. So the first finding was related to the visas. The issue was business visas and work visas are difficult to obtain. There's a lot of paperwork in the form of invitations, personal guarantees, income tax returns, city specificity, entry, exit point restrictions, police reporting, etc. are all applicable. And only one visa station in each other's country, which leads to delays. So what does this imply? SMEs are unable to go on missionary business trips to explore markets. Joint ventures in the IT, engineering services, fashion, media, hospitality, franchising sectors in which the most vibrant SMEs operate are unable to do business across each other's borders. And this is the disturbing part, a parallel industry which provides the necessary paperwork has developed on both sides of the border. So the remedy, a letter from an accredited chamber of commerce or a trade body should suffice for the granting of a business or a work visa. The second issue is this issue of agents. Agents at the border crossings at Wagah and Atari have created a nexus with the customs and logistics providers on both sides of the border. What does it imply for the SME sector? This creates an entry barrier as well as increasing the transaction cost for legal cross-border trade. And the remedy, better sharing of information on procedures, processes, and an efficient remedy mechanism. The third finding was lack of information. Not enough information is available on India's rules and regulations, especially those relating to the states. Implication is reluctant to export because of payment risks involved. And she's heard